Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Germinal Van. And today I'd like to talk about a specific topic that is basically the topic of the day, as we say. It is the topic that has basically divided or destroyed friendships, divided families and acquaintances. It is the topic that everyone is talking about. It is the topic that everyone is giving their opinions about. So I like to talk about, of course, Roe v. Wade. I like to give here my take, but the take I want to give is not from a moral perspective. I'm not concerned about the moral aspect of Roe v. Wade because I believe that morality at the end of the day is more of a personal matter. We people do not have exactly the same morals. So I'm not here to argue whether my moral is better than others. That's not my point here. Here, I want to talk about Roe v. Wade from a pure political theory or political science perspective. And what I mean by that is that I want to argue about this topic from the relationship between abortion and political authority. So I want to argue here about the impact of abortion on political authority. So as we know, Roe v. Wade is one of the most controversial, if not the most controversial Supreme Court case in American legal history. And as we know, Roe was decided in 1973 to be constitutional. So it became basically a legal precedent. So it became constitutional on the grounds of the 14th Amendment, which according to 9 judges of the Supreme Court during that year, that Roe v. Wade was constitutional because it was protected by the right to privacy. But let me read to you guys the 14th Amendment, what the Section 1 says. It says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So this amendment essentially focuses on legal citizenship rather than the right to privacy, in my opinion. I mean, at least this is the way I understood it. And we can even go further in the 14th Amendment by analyzing the privileges and immunity clause. So this clause, the privileges and immunity clause, states that the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. So basically, this clause protects the fundamental rights of individuals and it restrains the state efforts to discriminate against out-of-state citizens. From my understanding from this clause, it was written to emphasize the privilege of Black people, essentially, who were entitled at this point to enjoy being a legal citizen of the United States after being enslaved for 4 centuries. So this clause, especially the 14th Amendment, was written, first of all, to protect minorities against the power of the majority. So to me, this clause, the 14th Amendment, in fact, epitomized the vision of the founding fathers who were against democracy. Here, they say we're protecting minorities because Black people were enslaved, Native Americans were basically persecuted for so long. So we are going to create an amendment that will actually protect them because they have the right to life. So that's what it is essentially. So this clause basically accentuates the fact that no state government could discriminate against an out-of-state citizen because an out-of-state citizen is first and foremost a citizen of the United States of America. So the privileges and immunities clause does not mention in any case, in my opinion, that abortion is a fundamental right. So what is a fundamental right? A fundamental right is a negative right. And a negative right is a right that the government cannot grant the citizen. It is a right that is already granted to man by God or by higher power, if we basically rely on the Lockean theory of the state of nature, because that approach was developed in the Second Treatise of Government by John Locke. So when we take this approach, we understand that the role of government then is merely to protect that right. It's not to grant, to tell you if you have access to this right or not. No, it's you already have access to it. And the role of the government is just to protect that, like to say, okay, this is your right. We'll make sure that no one tries to take it away from you. That's our job. That's what the negative right is. So it is important to understand that the fundamental rights of man are characterized by the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to property. And it is within these three rights that the US Constitution was designed to protect the individual against the coercive powers of government. So now let's focus a little bit on abortion here. If abortion is a right, it is definitely a positive right, if it is a right, but it is not a fundamental or a negative right. Some may argue that, the right to abortion falls into the category of the right to liberty because it emphasizes a woman's freedom to choose what she could do with her body. Sure, indeed, a woman is free to do what she wants with her body because she's a human being. She has the right. But the right to liberty rests on the principle that for one's liberty to be sustained, it shall not infringe upon the freedom and life of others. So in order for you to be free, you have to make sure that your freedom does not cause a negative externality on someone else. So if we apply pure logic, abortion infringes upon the right to life because a baby being aborted is a life being taken, because at the end, a baby is a human being. I'm not going to get into the detail of where life started or anything, but at the end of the day, a baby is a human being. And if we're about a baby, it's a life being taken. At least we can agree on that. I'm not discussing the reason why the baby being aborted. No, I'm just stating a fact here that if a baby is being aborted, is the life being taken. So abortion is rather a right granted by government than a God-given right. It means that abortion is only permissible because government has decided so, not because it is a natural or a inalienable right. That's why we say that abortion is a positive right, because it is a right that is granted to the citizen by the government. The government said, okay, we're going to give you guys that right. You can do whatever you want with it, but we're giving it to you. We're granting it to you. That means that we can take it away from you whenever we feel like we can. But do not misunderstand me though. I do understand that the issue of abortion is not a black and white issue at all. It's gray. It's more complicated than that. There are too many variables involved, and some of these variables cannot be controlled, obviously. Rape is, of course, one of these cases where abortion seems like a necessary course of action to take. Health complications. It's also another variable where abortion seems like a legitimate course of action to take. However, I think it is important to assert that not all abortions are based on rape, incest, or healthcare complications. I've done some research and I've seen that according to a study conducted by the Guttmacher Institute, which basically surveyed 1,209 post-abortive women from 9 different clinics across the United States. And the top reason for which women had an abortion were because they could either not afford a baby or they were not ready for a child, or basically they were done having kids and they didn't want anymore. So when we look at the data, we see that the victims of rape represent basically less than 0.5%. For women who have fatal health problems, that's why they have an abortion, is only 3%. For women who have physical health problems and they needed an abortion for that, it only represented 4%. For women who believe that abortion would interfere with their education or their career, they only represent 4%. For women who believe that they were not mature enough to raise a child when they were pregnant and they needed an abortion for that, that was 7%. For women who believe that they didn't want to be single mothers, so they had to abort, that they represent 8%. For women who were done having a kid and they didn't want anymore, so they felt that they had no choice but to abort, they represent 19%. And for women who simply could not afford a baby for financial reasons, so they believe that they had to abort the baby, this is 23%. For women who simply felt that they were not ready to have a kid, they represent 25%. And other reasons is 6%. But my take here on Roe v. Wade is not about whether abortion is morally good or bad. I don't care about that part. I'm not concerned with morality. Again, morality to me, it's a personal issue like religion is salvation. You have your morals, I have mine. I'm not here to tell you that your morals are wrong or anything. I'm not concerned about morals. My take here focus on the role of political authority regarding the issue. It is important to reiterate again that Roe v. Wade does not focus on abortion per se, but on the right to privacy. And we saw in the 14th Amendment that it doesn't say anything about the right to privacy. It talks about privileges and immunities, but didn't talk about privacy. On June 24th, 2022, in a 6-3 majority opinion, the Supreme Court overturned Roe and argued that it is unconstitutional on the grounds that the Constitution makes no reference to abortion. No such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, according to Justice Samuel Alito. So basically what the Supreme Court did here was to delegate political authority back to the states, because the states are the elected representative of the people at the end of the day. And each state now gets to decide if it wants to either maintain or abolish abortion laws. So to me, it makes sense for Roe v. Wade to be overturned because abortion is a positive right, whereas the role of the government is to only protect negative rights. That's the key point here. The role of the government is to protect any rights that we believe that no one can take it away from you, not rights that are, I would say, secondary in the sense that they can be granted to you because, well, that's what the majority wants. The right to life, liberty, and property is not a set of rights that the majority wants. It is the right that protects the individual as a unit, as an organic structure, as a measure of, or a unit of consciousness. It is important. So the significance of the overturn of Roe v. Wade shows that since 1973, the American people took the issue of abortion for granted, in my opinion, as it became law of the land. So, you know, men and women felt that they didn't need to really worry about abortion anymore. If a woman wants to have abortion, no matter where she is in the United States, she can have it, no problem. But now that this legal precedent has been overturned and political authority has been returned to the states, this situation will force individuals to now get involved in local politics. Now, if you believe that your rights have been stripped away from you, it's time to get involved into local politics, to pay attention to the representative that you put in office. It's time to get involved. it's time to understand the issues that are at stake and see how these issues, if they become policies, how they're going to affect your life. Because Roe v. Wade, in fact, is a lesson for everyone. Because we started to rely too much on government, on the federal government, should I say. We start to believe that the federal government is here to do stuff for us instead of just protecting our negative rights. We started to ask government to do more for us. It's not the role of the federal government to do more for us. The role of the federal government is simply to establish a legal framework which will allow us to pursue our endeavors. That's all. Not to do stuff for us. So people now will realize that if they want their rights to be safeguarded, they need to elect officials that actually reflects the political and moral values. And on top of that, it will force individuals to even be more responsible in general. That's the lesson to take from Roe v. Wade. Because the Supreme Court basically gave power back to the states and say each state, because we live in a federal system, each state has the right to decide how they want to govern their own laws. The people who are in power in each of the 50 states of the United States were elected democratically. We have local elections in every state. We have state elections in every state as well. No one took power by force in each state of the United States. So if people disagree with a law, it's now their role to get involved and make everything possible to change that law. For instance, for people who live in the state of Alabama, Alabama is one of the most conservative states in the country. So they have very restrictive abortion laws. So for women who do not feel safe living in Alabama, it's now time to change the course of action. It's now time to either get involved in politics and try to shift things in Alabama, or to simply leave the state. But everything, everything depends on on everyone's situation. Of course, some women cannot just leave the state because they cannot afford it. That's why if we don't like what we have, it is our role as individuals to change the condition. And that's what the overturn of Roe v. Wade is telling us. Political power has been transferred back to the states, basically transferred back to the people. Now it's time, and it's up to the people to change the laws of their state if they don't like the current laws being in place. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was my take on Roe v. Wade. As I said, I was not arguing this case from a moral issue. I'm not concerned with that. It was more a matter of political authority, how abortion has impacted political authority. So let me know what you think. But until then, I'll see you guys soon.